Couple minutes past 10 o'clock here this morning. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this morning's Medical Alley webinar presented by Business Solution Partners. Our discussion today is focused on scaling success in the medtech, medical device, and in biotech as well, navigating ERP for growth and for funding. My name is Ben Wagner. I'm delighted to be moderating today's discussion with a great panel of experts, and I'm excited to introduce them here in just a moment. But first, a couple of just quick notes. Today's discussion is being recorded, so you'll receive a link afterward if you'd like to rewatch or send to a colleague. We'll begin here with a few questions for our panelists, but we also want this discussion to be interactive. So if you have any questions of your own, be sure to put that in the Q&A function here in the Zoom link, and we'll do our best to get to everybody's questions as well. So with that, we do have a great panel with us this morning. First is Bjarke Ormstrup with Viking Resources, Nathan Chandrasekaran of Columbia River Partners, and George Makhoul, who is the CEO of Dilon Technologies. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you all really for your time this morning, for your insight, for your expertise. I think might be good here just to get started with a quick round of introductions, a little bit about you, the company that you represent, and kind of how you fit into this discussion this morning. So Bjarke, how about we start with you?
Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Bjarke Ormstrup. I founded Viking Resources back in 2015. Viking Resources is a NetSuite alliance partner, so we help companies implement NetSuite, and we focus on the medical device space. Viking is now part of the Business Solution Partner company. Before that, I was Global VP of IT for a medical device company here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we grew the company very rapidly and ended up with about 375 NetSuite users in a global environment. But I've used multiple systems in my career. Really what kind of intrigued me with NetSuite is the simplicity of a true cloud-based system. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that a little bit later. In the last 8 years, we have helped about 80 med device companies implement or operate in NetSuite. So my contribution, hopefully today, is really more from a practical implementation perspective and come up and provide some aspects of that.
Bjarke, thank you. George, how about we turn to you next?
Great. George Makhoul, CEO of Dilon Technologies. I've been in the medical device business for over 20 plus years, and Dilon is a women's healthcare company that has expanded into the biosurgery environment. And when I first came to Dilon, we did not have an ERP system in place, which we'll dig into and talk a lot more about today. And I've been very fortunate enough to have a good balance of working for some large companies and small companies, which gives a really good perspective when we're getting into conversations like these and implementing these systems to have the right mix of efficiency and effectiveness.
Thank you, George. And Nathan, finally, I'll turn it to you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for making time. Real quick, Nathan Chandrasekaran. I work with Columbia River Partners, a firm that I founded 4 years ago. We're a private equity firm based in the Pacific Northwest. We focus on investing in companies like Bjarke's and Business Solution Partners. We focus on, part of our job is raising capital, investing in good businesses and helping them grow. One of the key functions is understanding the financial reporting systems, what we are inheriting, and often how do we help them improve it. And I'm happy to walk through it at the right times, how that impacts diligence, valuation, growth plans going forward.
Nathan, thank you. Thank you all for being here. So Bjarke, let's just set the stage here. Can you just give us a bit of an overview of really what ERP systems are and really why they're critical in the medical device and the biotech spaces?
How much time do we have here, Ben?
we got 55 minutes. Yeah.
No, I don't want to spend too much, but just kind of setting the stage. I believe that the term ERP was used in the 90s by Gartner, but ERP systems have been around for much longer than that. I think in the 60s, so for more than 15 years, we've seen kind of systems that help companies manage their business. So, and that's really what ERP systems do. It's software that helps company manage all the aspects or most aspects of their business. So it's anything from CRM to customer service and sales orders and shipments, even manufacturing, inventory control, purchase and procurement, and then of course see the underlying financial implications of these activities and generate income statement, cash flow statement, balance sheets, and stuff like that. So in another word, if at least implemented correctly, the ERP system become that single version of the truth. So that's kind of what the ERP systems do. Initially, these systems were very limited in functionality. They were very rigid, and I'm talking before 2000. And then, it was big green screens that were used. And then over the years, more solutions, more competitors came to the market with their ERP system, more functionality became available, and more flexibility. And of course, the technology has developed tremendously as well. And then probably in the last 20 years or so, a new class of ERP systems started to become available. So, and NetSuite, which is obviously what we work with, it was kind of the leaders in that. And what they did was, instead of having hardware installed, everything was in the cloud. They were very early on, but really what it meant from a business perspective is that you didn't have to hire a bunch of IT people and buy a bunch of very expensive hardware. And that's really how we've come to where we are today. Again, there is probably more than 100 ERP systems out there today, but again, the systems continue to develop.
George, you mentioned you're the CEO of Dilon Technologies, and before you started there was not an ERP system in place. I wonder if you could take us kind of through that journey that you were on. What led you to implement this system, and maybe some of the initial challenges that you were facing that led you to implement an ERP system?
Sure, Ben. And when you're thinking about how you're going to operate your organization, you start looking at your financials, which are mission critical to everything you're doing, right? Especially if you're trying to raise capital, or if you want to go public at some point, you start looking at how you're operating. And for a company like Dilon, which has been around for a number of years, they've also been the acquirer of a few different companies and their assets. So these things happen all the time, whether you're a large company or a small company. When you're an acquirer, you inherit these companies or these products, and they all come with these different systems they're working on. And what becomes challenging is when you have your financial leadership team and they're trying to work on arranging your monthly financials, your quarterly financials, your annual statements. You're having to pull information from so many different places, and you now have all these different processes that you have to follow, and it becomes very difficult. It becomes more time consuming. So we started to look at a way to really try and centralize that so we could have one system in place. And we evaluated many of them. We spent several months looking at all the different types of vendors, and we ended up choosing NetSuite. And some of the things that were leading us to make those decisions were thinking about the end stages. If we were ever to be acquired, it's important to think about what do some of the larger companies have as far as an ERP system, so you can plug into that in an easier way. I remember when I was working for a larger company and we would take on companies, sometimes part of the diligence was what type of ERP system they had, if any at all. And depending on how large the acquisition was going to be and how cumbersome that could be financially, that was certainly a factor in thinking about the company. If there was another asset that was very similar, thinking about how we would integrate that into the system. So we wanted to get that in place, thinking about that piece of it, but also when you're going through that process of getting yourselves ready to become an audited company and get your financials in order, it's very critical to have this repeatable system in place with the ERP so you get good traceability.
And Nathan, we'll kind of get to this a little bit more here in just a moment, but so maybe some of your initial thoughts on how ERP systems really impact a company's performance and its attractiveness to investors like yourself.
Yeah, it's a great question. We've done 15 transactions the last 3.5 years. We've bought companies, a combination of carve-outs and investing in companies like Business Solution Partners and Viking Resources. And we've seen the gamut. We've seen companies come off Oracle. We've seen companies move up to QuickBooks. And, it's not the initial diligence, right? When we look at the company, but it becomes very important during our diligence process. And often we'll bring in a firm, we'll bring a third-party firm to do what we call a quality of earnings, right? And they'll review the accounting systems, the financials, and how smooth that quality of earnings process goes is highly dependent on what kind of financial systems have been put in place. And companies that have invested the time and the money to put in an ERP system like NetSuite, and they've done it properly, makes that quality of earning system, that report come back much easier. So it's a pretty critical, important piece as part of our diligence process, particularly when we bring in our third parties. I don't personally go in and assess the ERP system myself, but I bring in a third party. That's all they do is they assess again, the quality of the earnings. How strong is the earnings stream, and how easy is it to get that data from the company, which is tied to the ERP system.
Interesting. I kind of want to move on to implementation to start here. So George, what were some of maybe those initial challenges you faced as you began to implement an ERP system? And I wonder, for the, maybe some of the leaders that we have on this call this morning, what advice might you have for them, where they may be able to avoid some of those roadblocks?
Well, part of the reason why I'm invited to be on this call is having a good implementation partner like BSP, right? So one of the things you want to think about is, okay, how strong are you to just go through a standard training for, let's say, the ERP provider alone? And the answer is probably not. You need to find a really good implementation partner, because there are so many things that you just don't really understand that you're going to have to come across when you're taking on this. There's a certain number of things you're going to have to be responsible for, but when those things finally occur, there's a lot more that's going to happen. So you have to have a good implementation partner, as I stated in the beginning. The second part of it is you have to really make sure your team is well trained. And it doesn't necessarily matter how long you have these sandboxes open for. So the sandbox is essentially when you can have an alternate version of the ERP system working in your system, but it's not officially live and it doesn't make any changes to what you do. So your teams can be in there, they can make mock transactions, mock entries, they can really play around in the sandbox and get a feel for the system. The hard part is you try to set a time limit on how long that's going to be for, and it could be as short or as long as you want, but until you go live, your teams never really fully understand and appreciate the level of technical expertise they need to have, or the level of proficiency they need to have. So that's where your implementation partner becomes really critical, because they're going to become such an integral part of the day-to-day entries, day-to-day transactions, day-to-day usage, and they're going to train your teams to do all of these things going into it, but they're going to become even more critical when you're live, because now everything they do matters, right? Mistakes are going to occur, things are going to happen, and you're going to want them to help pull you through that. And that's what was great about Bjarke and his team, was that they were what you would call a team that was hands-on as much or how little you needed them. So we try to make ourselves efficient and provide them with all the things that we felt like we needed some more work or training or assistance on. And then they would map that out to the right team member, and that team member would then give us a lot of their dedicated time so we can go through and have things worked out. So I really feel like you have to be so prepared for the live transition and be ready to have that implementation team be hands-on with you, because your teams are just not going to get as proficient in the sandbox as you think they're going to be, and they're not going to be as proficient as they think they are going into it.
And if I may add, George, excuse me, one of the things we saw, and it's a normal thing in these implementations, is users are used and they have a lot of conflicting kind of priorities. And training typically falls to the bottom as long as they're in a test environment or sandbox environment. And they're much more motivated to get trained when they have to, which unfortunately is after go live. So part of the implementation is also just prepare for that. Don't think that everybody's going to be trained 100% before you go live, and then there's no training after. It's kind of a process until everybody's ready, and a lot of time it's after go live. That's just normal.
Well, that's good advice, George and Bjarke. Thank you for jumping in. I'm going to stick with you here too. Bjarke, so more broadly, how can companies, really both large and small, successfully integrate an ERP system to make sure that they are enhancing operations and driving growth?
Well, I think first of all, I think it's important for everybody on the company side to realize that implementing a new ERP is a large undertaking. This is not a trivial thing you can delegate to the new kid on the block. This is something that involves key people in the organization, key managers, typical managers that are already taxed with other things. So you really have to prepare for that. We have seen companies where they try to hire people to do the implementation. In my mind, that's not advisable because they are new, they don't understand your company either, so they're not going to represent you very well. And then the other part of this is try to keep a balance, and there's a lot of ways to balance. One is, everybody has an appetite for big companies. A lot of small companies are plans to be billion-dollar companies. But please don't set your company, your processes and your ERP system up as if you are a billion-dollar company. Set them up as what you are. If you have, $4 million in revenue or $10 million in revenue, set up the system for that. Don't come up with these convoluted processes that you may need 2 years down the road. So that's another area. And then by the way, don't try to boil the ocean or vacuum the beach or whatever we say these days. Don't try to get everything in there on day one. Make it a process, make it a stair step where you get the new system in, get everybody used to that. And then let's say you haven't really done RF scanning in your warehouse before. Well, then take that as a phase 2 to try to phase things out as opposed to try to do one big bang. And now you're going from one type of company to a complete different kind of company. And then, there were a lot of other elements of this, but one thing, especially around training, we have a lot of companies as we are going live that the company or specific users don't feel they're ready. Listen, you're never going to be 100% ready. You're never going to be 100% trained. So it's kind of like you have to kind of jump into the pool and then start swimming at some point in time. We have had companies where they insisted on being parallel in a test environment for 3, even 6 months. And they weren't more ready after 3 or 6 months. They just lost 3 or 6 months and a lot of money. So I think just be realistic about, we are never going to, this is not comfortable that when we're going live, we're never going to say, yep, we are 100% ready and nothing will go wrong. That's
Bjarke, you make a great point right there, because that's such a key component in this, where everyone's so afraid to go to the live standpoint. It's my feeling is that sandbox should be a shorter time, because it just becomes this crutch to say, well, we're not sure. And it goes back to what we said. You don't know what you don't know. So rip the Band-Aid off and get going live so you can really get things done. And it actually saves a lot of expense and time, because now you actually have a less time that you're interacting with your implementation partner, and the time you're spending with them is so much more effective and efficient.
Absolutely.
Nathan, I wonder if you could jump in here too on this kind of topic of readiness. So what kind of key factors maybe do you consider when assessing a company's readiness for ERP implementation?
I'll give you guys maybe more an actual example. We bought a company, not a separate company, about 2 years ago, which already had NetSuite. And they implemented it, I don't know, 2016, 2017. And I don't know who they used to the initial implementation, but I believe it was, and I shouldn't say this, but it was NetSuite directly, is my understanding. We hired a new CFO, new controller came in, and 12 months ago, I get a phone call, hey man, the NetSuite that was implemented was a disaster. And I'm not an accountant, and there was 70 lines of revenue, which I guess there shouldn't be, it should be like 1. So I called up Bjarke and the BSP team, said, hey guys, can you come take a look at this? And they've come in and said, hey, the first time the NetSuite was implemented, it wasn't done properly. So now we're doing a rescue implementation. And the big decision we had is, do we rip, to George's point, do we rip the Band-Aid off, or do we kind of live with that current environment? And where we struggled, we couldn't get the KPIs that we wanted to understand the business, right? And we've been doing a bunch of add-ons at that business. So the lesson we learned is, even though there was NetSuite, it wasn't implemented properly. We're starting to see degradation in the KPIs, so we couldn't get the KPIs. And so now we've hired business solution partners to do what we call a rescue implementation, to come back in and redo the whole thing. And we now have someone assigned. And to your point, we're just ripped the Band-Aid off. We could have run with this for another 2-3 years, but if we're going to grow this business, which we want to do, and we want to eventually sell this business to somebody else, we've got to get the financial reporting in line. And it comes back to your point, readiness and ripping the Band-Aid off. And it's going to cost us a fair amount of money, but it's all good. We're going to fix it, and we're doing it all at once, and there's we're moving forward.
There's a question that's come in the Q&A, and normally we'd save these kind of for the end, but I think it's timely for where we are now in this discussion. For George, the question is, timing for small businesses is so important. How did you and your team decide on the timing and kickoff to live length of the install on your ERP system? Was it top and bottom line effective?
Okay, good. So you've got a couple of questions and they're loaded into one. So
yeah,
when we talked about the timing of it, we tried to get a lot of the training done closer towards the end of the year so that we could really get our teams in a situation where we could have a clean slate to start the new year off and have an implementation done in place. So when you do that, though, you have to make sure that you are still working in your old systems so you can get your, let's say, current financial year's books closed and have all the statements done in the way you're going to have them in a timely manner, so you're not running into any hurdles with a new integration of the new system. That's the key part to that. So what we did was we had the sandbox going for a few months going into the end of the year, and then we went live. I want to say it was about 2 weeks into the new year, so we had enough time to get our financials closed and then start in the new system. And I thought that went well, and it gave us a good opportunity to get our teams locked and loaded on that. Now, with saying that, I'm sharing with you our experience of, I think we should have gone live actually sooner if we could have, and then kept our old financials in place at the time, because again, there were things that started popping up, and an implementation should have taken maybe a few short months, took a lot longer for us because not everyone was running at full speed at the same time. So I think that was a key component for us, was having a shorter sandbox and go. But I think that the top and bottom line were not impacted in a negative way. We were able to work with the Viking team at the time, which is now BSP, and we were able to work that into our agreement with them as to how we figured these things out. And what I'll tell you is, what you're going through, they've seen this already many, many times. So they already know what to expect. So when they're looking at how they're pricing in their agreement with you, they're actually seeing the blind spots for you ahead of time. So they're pretty upfront with how they're going to help you manage through that. It isn't like it's going to be a surprise for you now that you need some more help as to what that's going to be in that part of it. So I think you can feel pretty good about they're going to see that ahead of time for you, even though you're not.
Bjarke, I wonder if you could discuss, the difference, the balance really between customization, sort of standardization in ERP systems. I wonder if you could kind of take us through that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, in the good old ERP days, customization was a bad thing. With these new modern platforms, it becomes more configuration options. So it sounds less bad. And it is less bad because in the old days, when you did a customization, you had to manually carry it forward in the code when you wanted to upgrade. Obviously, with these modern systems, that's no longer the case. The systems are being upgraded and it's just part of the code base. So it doesn't have these limitations. But on the other side, that doesn't mean that it's kind of the Wild West where you can change everything and should change everything. And really the way we recommend, we're working with our customers is to challenge them when they have something that's saying, oh, the standard ERP system, standard NetSuite doesn't work for us. We typically say, well, let's talk about why it wouldn't work for you. And what it really ends up is you as a company to focus on what truly makes you unique. Because the fact that you have a slightly different way to put things in a box doesn't really make you unique. Let's just be honest. But there are other aspects of your business that truly does. Maybe it's the product offering, the way you're pricing things, the way you're selling, the way you're recognizing revenue. There are a lot of other elements that could truly define your business, and those are the ones that are important. So having an understanding of what makes us unique in the marketplace, and make sure you communicate that to us when we implement NetSuite. Obviously, we have a process to make sure we detect these things and work with you on that. But just have an internal awareness so you all have an agreement of what makes us unique, and then let's focus on these customization if needed at all.
Bjarke, I'm going to stick with you as we kind of shift the discussion a bit to regulatory here. So really, what role does an ERP system play in ensuring regulatory compliance in the medtech and biotech fields, particularly with FDA and ISO standards?
Yeah, it's a really good question because, what we have seen over the years is that 10 years ago, 8 years ago, a lot of companies said, oh, if it's a cloud-based system, it can't really be validated, it can't really be included in that regulatory kind of system setup. That is obviously not correct. There's been a shift in that, and more quality and regulatory departments and companies recognize that most stuff is in the cloud today, and they kind of work with that. So I think that's one element of it. But the other element is that, in my mind, a correctly implemented ERP system really helps you reinforce your regulatory compliance. It's used to govern how your processes are executed. So let's just say, very basic example, that you have some inventory that came in and it's now sitting in quarantine. Your ERP system should ensure that those quarantine products are not being used in a manufacturing environment. So it governs those kind of rules that really helps you from a regulatory perspective. The other thing, it also formalized processes. There's nothing that, quality people, don't take it the wrong way, because I'm sure there's some on here. They like standardization. They like that everything is uniform. And the system really helps formalize these processes to make sure that we do things the same way every single time, which minimize the risk of having deviations. It also ensures that repetitiveness, that when we do it, we always do it the same way. And then it kind of also helps document what's really going on, because in the ERP system today, all your shipping transactions are in there. So if you have to do a recall, you can go into your ERP system, if it's validated, to see where a specific lot number actually went. So it helps you gather a lot of the information that otherwise would be on paper. It would help you gather all that information much quicker, and then we can go and do full forward or backward traceability. So there's a lot of elements in ERP that kind of coincides and help the quality management processes.
Nathan, I wonder how you evaluate the role of ERP systems in managing risk related to regulatory compliance, especially during a merger acquisition.
It's a great question. It's not usually my area of focus in terms of regulatory compliance. I'm usually more tied to the audits, right? Usually what we'll do is we'll have most of our companies are required to be audited or reviewed or audited. And we'll usually get at the end of an audit process, right? A third-party accounting firm comes in, does an audit, and they'll give us sort of call it a red flags memo. Like, here is the 4 or 5 things that need to be improved upon, right, from your ERP system or reporting system from that perspective. Usually the less the better, but we always know in the first year of a transition, there's always more. And we just kind of want to know those risks up front, and then we'll work with the management teams to address those over time.
George, is there?
Yeah,
go ahead.
There's a lot of the things you're talking about from more from a financial perspective actually overlaps with the quality and management, because there's some of the same elements of predictability and things are tested and all that really works on both sides of the fence, both on the finance and accounting side and on the quality side. So a lot of times when you do these things, you actually help the other side too, or structure the other side to make sure that they can also live up to their end of the deal.
George, is there a component here in this regulatory, not specifically regulatory, but related to transactions or compliance, where your ERP system is activated?
What's important is that you're going to have a lot of traceability. Bjarke was touching on that. And when you have things all organized in this ERP system, everything then becomes married to each other, right? So if you're doing some things that happen to be related to a certain lot number or inventory or where a transaction went, anything that's associated or linked to it now becomes usable inside of that ERP. So there is a great amount of detail and flexibility that it gives you once you have it there and everything's entered in there.
And if I may add, George, the other thing we often see is that where companies say, we don't really want to invite the ERP system into kind of the circle of trust from a quality perspective, you're actually burdening the workers, the employees out there on the floor with double work, because they have to do it in the ERP system for all the reasons we're talking about, finance and inventory control and all that. But now you also have a piece of paper over here where they're pretty much recording the same information. So now they're doing double work. So at least having a conversation about how far you can take it. And quite honestly, we have companies that are still very paper-based. We have some that are in the middle, some that are fully paperless. And it's a journey, and it's not something you can accomplish. If everything's paper-based today, you can't go to fully electronic on day one. That's not realistic, but you can start the journey. And as you're doing that and moving from one end to the other, you're actually eliminating some of this duplicated work out on the floor as well.
As we look now at investment and really the business impact of an ERP system, Nathan, I wonder in what ways can an ERP system enhance investor confidence? And we touched on this a bit before, but really supporting funding efforts for medical device and biotech companies.
Yeah, I can't speak specifically for a medical device and biotech, but I'll speak in general just for investments. One of the things we'll ask is how quickly can you close your books, right? Is it a 5-day process? Is it a 15-day process? After the month ends, we've seen companies, particularly post BSPs getting involved, they'll close in 5 or 7 days. We have other companies that takes 45 days to close their books, and we're like, why is it taking so long? Why does it, if the month ends March 30th, but we're not getting financials till May 15th, how is management understanding what to do with their business if they're in the blind for 45 days, right? So we've seen that, particularly if they're still on QuickBooks or they haven't properly implemented a business. So when we're looking at investing in businesses, one of the first questions we ask is, hey, how quickly can you close your books? And can you do cash and accrual, right? Just very simple questions. And if we get an answer that is, hey, we can close pretty quickly, we've got all our expenses, all our payroll, all our balance sheet information there, can get it to in a week, great. Then clearly they probably put on, assuming there's assuming it's accurate, that's a positive sign, right? That, hey, these guys, they understand their business, they can close quickly. If it takes a lot longer, then what we have to go then have a discussion with the seller or the owners. Hey, it shouldn't take you 45 days. And I know you want this valuation, but you've probably taken some shortcuts, right, in your ERP and financial reporting system that we're going to have to put money in to invest in that, to upgrade it, right? Either re-implement NetSuite or move from QuickBooks or whatever system to NetSuite. And that's gonna hurt your valuation. So not being able to close your books efficiently and provide, to go back to KPIs, in my mind, can have a pretty detrimental effect to your valuation. If it's if we see during the diligence process that it's much more elongated than normal to get reporting out. Ben, does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's really what we're looking for, is that how do you, I think that valuation point you touched on really was key there. Yeah.
The last thing I want to hear is we make an investment, we close a deal, and then 6 months later, I get a call from the CFO, the controller. Hey man, our reporting system doesn't work. We got to re-implement everything. I got to do this, which has happened to me twice now out of our 15. And it drives me bonkers. It just drives me nuts. And then I have to go, and then I have to go back to the seller, right? Have a discussion with them, and then try to figure out how do we burden it? Who shares the burden? Those are the most difficult conversations. So you want to avoid those, right? That's the goal. And my advice to entrepreneurs or business, don't take shortcuts. It usually catches up to you, right? And not just implementing NetSuite, but you got to do it right. And that's, and you don't want to have the worst is having a rescue implementation, which I'm going through right now, where you got to redo it, so avoid those if they can. I know it's the fear of investing dollars up front, but hopefully if you grow your business the right way, it will pay dividends in the long term.
Bjarke, I'm sure you've had those same conversations as well.
Absolutely. I echo everything Nathan says there, and especially on the analytics side, it's extremely important to have a good system, because you're going to get asked all kind of questions. Not only who's your top customers, but also who hasn't bought from you and who is buying from you now that didn't. There is a lot of analytics going into these acquisition activities, and having a system that support all that is it just. Now you don't have to throw a lot of headcounts at it to support all of that. You just run it out of your ERP system.
Bjarke, I'll stay with you here. So how can companies measure an ROI from their ERP system? What metrics really should they be focusing on, in your opinion?
And that's a really good question. I'm sure, George, you'll weigh in on this as well. But I think there was kind of a couple of different elements. Obviously, the cost is easy, at least the direct cost of implementing an ERP system with the consulting and the software, and maybe even some of the personnel that you have set aside to support the implementation from an internal perspective. What gets much harder is on the benefit side, because a lot of companies, quite honestly, if you're running QuickBooks and a bunch of Excel sheets, you don't know what the number of back orders you have or the stock outs you have or other things that are really detrimental to the business. And even if you have it, it's hard to put a value on, because what if you spend, $2,000 on getting a customer and the first time he orders, it's delayed, and then he stops buying from you? The lifetime value of that customer could be much, much higher. And nobody really, that's difficult to track those things. So there are some easy ones, like I mentioned, what's the number of back orders, the returns, rework, stuff like that. That's much, much easier to measure. But I think most of the gain, especially in these smaller organizations, all the more softer costs. I mean, I've worked with a company where the CFO was very aware of what it cost him to do and what the impact on his EBITDA was of having a new ERP system. But what he didn't account in was now they were able to move most of their manufacturing to Dominican Republic at a much, much lower rate, because we implemented it in the US and Dominican. It was completely transparent to the operation where they were doing the work. But obviously doing it in a low-cost country had a very impactful effect on the bottom line. But is that the ERP system alone? No, it's not. But the ERP system allows you to do things like that kind of moves the needle. It's not just, do we go from 10% to 12%? No, we're going from 10% to 100%. So it's that order of magnitude. But I'm sure, George, you have some considerations here as well.
Well, I think when you're trying to put a specific dollar amount on the ROI, I think sometimes even Nathan probably looks at it as an investor. Operators of companies, right, when they want to make a significant investment in something like a system, you want to make sure your board understands why you're doing it and what that looks like. But the real ROI is, I mean, one, for someone like Nathan talking about getting books closed and financial statements 45 days later, right? That's a non-starter for pretty much anyone. But when you come out and say you can probably get your books closed within 5 days or 10 days at the most, that's a win right there. That might not be a tangible ROI as far as a dollar savings. It's one that you need, but you start to look at all the different efficiencies you create in your organization. Even think about, okay, do you necessarily need that time if you're a small company, let's say a sales operations headcount? You may be able to avoid adding a headcount, because if you work with, let's say, your implementation team, you can think about all the different KPIs you want to have, the different reports you want to have. You can create them, then you can start to schedule them, and then you can customize them based on different templates that you make. Well, there's an ROI right there for you on a headcount that you can maybe hold off on hiring until your company has a larger, let's say, need to scale the organization. When you start thinking about the inventory management, you can implement different things like we did using a company called RF Smart. That integrates directly in with NetSuite. So we help manage our inventory with the RF Smart and the NetSuite. So there's just different things that are going to happen for your teams, your employees, but having everything in this central location just allows everyone's time to move quicker. Think about even going back to sales. It's how do you want to pay commissions? Well, you can come up with commissions for your salespeople directly inside of NetSuite. They can spit the report out, and you can save time doing things that way. Just there are things that I think your direct employees spend doing that takes them either hours or days that now can just be already completed and set up for them. And it's just a minimal amount of labor that goes into it for it. So there is definitely a win. I think the pain points are always going to be in the very beginning, getting the implementation done. And depending on the level of tenure of your employees, is that willingness to change the way that things had been done before, because now they're going to be doing them a different way. And that's painful in the front, but the ROI is going to be in the back end when they're able to do more things for you.
George, I think you touched on a few of them there, but I wonder too if you could expand a bit more on the business impact that your ERP system has had on Dilon Technologies. Is there anything that you've seen that's been really successful since that implementation began?
Well, there are a lot that we can point to. I'll just try to stick with a few small ones just to save time for this meeting, and we can take Q&A or things offline if we need to be at a later time. You just think about the number of employees you have, you tend to be able to create a level of, let's say, adding additional few employees without adding them. So when you think about that is we've been able to get our inventory all aligned because we have different entities across France, across Israel, and in the US. And being able to track where all those things are is important. And when you have them all in that central location, then you're not having to really dive into different systems to do that. That's a critical one for us. And looking at just for our salespeople, being able to load in their sales quotas, having reports sent to them daily so they know where they stand. Those are really things that help move your needle. As much as if, let's say, you have a sales force that's whether they're direct or indirect, knowing what they're doing is critical. They all know they're going to have a number to hit and things to be accountable for, but when they can quickly see it daily or up to the minute or hourly, however the frequency is that they want to get into it, being able to give them that type of information that's readily available and it's updated live and not waiting for a certain feed to come in at a certain part of the evening, that allows them to be much more, let's say, confident in what they're doing. They feel comfortable of where they are. There's always a level set, and their peers also see how they're performing. And that just creates a different level of culture inside your organization that you really can't tangibly put a dollar amount onto, but it drives behaviors that maybe people don't really necessarily think they're going to see from it.
And if I may, George, your examples there remind me of one of the things we did. We had 60 sales reps using NetSuite, and one of the things we did, we had a recurring business model where customers were expected to pretty much order every week. And if they didn't, right, that meant that they were probably looking at one of our competitors. So what we did was we automated an email to our sales rep and say, this customer hasn't bought in the last 7 days. You should probably give him a call. And little things like that. It took an hour to set that up, and now it started blasting out emails to the salespeople when they had something that they potentially could be a problem. Again, it's hard to put a value on that, but those are a lot of those little things that if you set the system up correctly and really thoughtfully think about how you can utilize the information you have, you can really see some business impact.
Very true. Very true.
I want to remind everybody on the call that to put those questions in the Q&A function here on the Zoom link as well. We'll get those answered from our panelists as we kind of turn the conversation here to really a long-term vision for ERP systems and future trends. And Nathan, I'll start with you. How do you foresee the role of ERP systems evolving in the companies you invest in? And I wonder if there's an AI or machine learning component as that begins to evolve even more, if that you see that playing a role.
It's a great question. I'm probably the last person to comment on AI. Clearly business intelligence, right? I think that's for sure something we're spending more time on, whether it's using a NetSuite module for business intelligence or third-party product like Adaptive, right? Helping it a little smarter. Again, it comes back to KPIs. So we're trying to get smarter on how to use those to help us understand the key metrics of our business. The first part is, what are the metrics? And then how quickly can we, and are they useful? And then how quickly can we get those metrics, in? On the AI front, personally, I'm kind of taking I'm sort of taking a wait and see approach, right? Because I live in Seattle and everyone talks about AI, and I think everyone's jumping in. And I just read an article that a number of AIs are shutting down because they're burning cash too fast. So I think we're just going to kind of watch a little bit. I'm sure there'll be a role at some point in terms of using AI in what we're doing. We're just going to monitoring that because we'd rather learn from other people who've done it successfully. I don't need to be the leader. Again, remember, we're mostly small businesses, between 50 and 500 employees. And I don't want to be the first guy diving in a new AI platform, which I don't know how to use, and I don't want to be the guinea pig. So we're just taking it step by step, but we're watching it closely, if that makes sense.
Bjarke, I wonder if you might be able to jump in if you have any insight or on kind of how the future of ERP systems and where you see them evolving.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of different things. If you're looking over history, you see that the capabilities can continue to increase, and it doesn't really matter what it is. Internet speed, computer speed, any speed is continuing to increase. Cost doesn't necessarily go down, but it continues, the capacity continues to increase. So whatever that means and how that can be utilized in an ERP environment, you'll probably see that impact will just continue. Specifically around AI, and I mean NetSuite specifically have been very clear that they're going to jump into that pool and making NetSuite and all the ERP system more AI capable, whatever that means. I'm looking more like practical AI. I mean, wouldn't it be lovely if a CEO like George, instead of having to learn how to create a report, he could just type in real text and say, what was my sale yesterday? And the ERP system would be able to tell him. Those kind of, in my mind, those are kind of more practical AI, and that's what I would expect that the ERP system would do that. The challenge a little bit is the technology platform, because if you're on a 30 or 40-year-old platform, you build your whole ERP system, AI enabled is no trivial task. Obviously, these more modern cloud systems obviously have an advantage there, where they have a platform where stuff like that becomes easier. But I'm definitely expecting that there is going to be an impact from that perspective. But again, I'm hoping it's going to be more that practical element of AI. And then I think in general, when capacity continues to increase, it also means that our capabilities from an integration perspective. So yeah, we have an ERP system here, we have a quality management system here, and we have other system in our enterprise. I'm seeing that the interoperability between those just becomes seamless or more seamless. I mean, I think we're on the right path, but there's still a lot of technical details there. But I'm expecting that, yeah, you can see quality data in your ERP system, you can see ERP data in your quality system, very seamless. Inventory automation systems are out there in at least in larger enterprises, but I'm seeing integration between those and your ERP system become much more normal, much more commonplace. So a lot of those things that we're like, wow, how are we going to do that? It's just going to be handled through just technical evolution. I think maybe the biggest challenge that we see from an organization perspective is our people and our processes catching up, because now we can do all this automation, but who's governing that? Who's working on it? Who's managing that? Who's leading that? I think that's probably as much of a challenge. And it quite honestly has always been, right? We've always had cell phones that can do much more than we need them to do. So I think we'll see the same here.
George, do you, as you kind of look to the future, where do you see your organization leveraging that ERP system kind of in the next phases of implementation?
I think for us, it's just trying to get a feel for how we can continue to capture all the different metrics that we've been working on today and have it perfected. I think we're in a place right now where we're finally, I would say, at a spot where we're getting pretty comfortable within the system for all the employees who are here. And I think until we are at that 100% stage, I think we're going to be pretty status quo on it, where I think it's got us that level of efficiency here. Then as we look to the future for it, I think it's going to more dive into how we can get this integrated more into our business unit forecasting, predictability, more KPIs that I think are more relevant in that piece. I think that's going to be the part where we start to evolve and dig in a little bit deeper on.
Well, as we wait maybe for a couple of questions to come in, we have discussed quite a bit here this morning too. I want to go kind of around the horn to close out here with any kind of final words, thoughts, advice for anybody on the call related to ERP systems and to scaling and growing their business. Nathan, I think I'll start with you. Any kind of parting thoughts?
No, I think we covered a lot. I think for me is, as the investor, we're not digging deep into the weeds of these things. Like I couldn't tell you that. Honestly, I probably couldn't tell the difference between NetSuite versus Oracle versus Sage versus I don't know, right? What I'm trying to avoid is, hey, can I get my reporting on time? Am I getting the KPIs on time? Is management using those KPIs? Do they make sense? And the last thing I want to do is when make an investment and then find out 6 months later, hey, we got to do a re-implementation. That's the worst thing I want to do. So I think we are spending more time up front in our diligence process, like, and we have a quick checklist of how quickly can you get reports to us? How quickly can we see the operating reports with the KPIs? How we close the books? How is your audits if you're getting audited or reviewed or audited? What are what are they saying? It's just simple measures for us from the financial guys. It's a checklist, and the more yeses, the better. And even on the net, do they even have an ERP? When was it implemented? And who was the third party used to implement it is also becoming more important. Or we want to see a firm like BHP that's an expert at NetSuite implementations. The last thing we want is to find out, hey, you put NetSuite in, but it was, again, no offense, sometimes you get NetSuite directly doing it in, but they're going to put their junior guys on it. Whereas, or you might be a small firm and you hired a big consulting firm who does not have NetSuite expertise. So again, understanding those mechanics, we're spending more time to make sure that there truly is an ERP system implemented properly. So.
Well, that's good advice, Nathan. Thank you. George, any kind of final words or pieces of advice to pass along to our attendees today?
I think when you're ready for an ERP, make sure you do enough diligence on the companies you're going to look to partner with, see what they offer, try to figure out internally in your organization how much you can fit into what's called the standard package that they have. What I mean by that is, if your company can function without having to make a lot of different customizations to the system, I think you'll be best suited, especially if it's going to be the first time you're getting into an ERP, so that you don't have to call someone for support and they're not sure how to really work with you because you're so far off of what the standard ways that the system operates with. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you spend a good amount of time with your implementation partner. I will tell you the implementation partner is equally as important as it is choosing the ERP system you're going to go with. The implementation partner has to really be willing to get to know who you are, who your team members are, develop themselves in a relationship that's going to make them feel like they're a part of your team and your team feels like they're a part of the team, so that there's this openness to have a discussion about what they're going to be able to do to create this process and this working relationship is going to allow everyone to get up to speed quicker. It's all about how fast you can get your teams ramped up to be independent as possible. As much as you want to have that partner, you want to make sure there can be a time when that partner can exit from your org or be, let's say, leaned on as little as possible. So you want to lean on them a lot heavy, but they're doing a good job by hopefully getting you to not need them at all. And that's, I think, a piece that you want to make sure you balance of keeping them around as a crutch where they have to pull back from you as well, so you can go out there and do what your system is intending it to do.
Bjarke, I'll give you the final word here this morning. Any pieces of advice, parting notes for our attendees this morning?
No, I think George said it well. I think maybe a couple of things that I want to add was we do implement in about 90 to 120 days. So it's not a 6 month. It doesn't have to be a 6 month. Doesn't have to be a 9 month or a year, which used to be the case when you implement this system. And part of it is exactly because we understand what's going on out there and we understand what business the company is in and stuff like that. So I think that's one thing. I think the other part is, we see a lot with the small companies that they have 3 or 4 key events going on at the same time. They're implementing an ERP system, they're launching a product, they're moving to a new office. That's a bad setup. You're just taxing your internal resources too much. So anything you can do to kind of clear the plate and say for the next 90 days or 120 days, ERP is number 1A priority for us. The likelihood of a successful outcome is much, much higher. And then maybe the last thing is also, George says, when you're ready for a new ERP system. We see a lot of people that should have implemented an ERP system earlier when they were smaller. It doesn't get easier when you get bigger. And quite honestly, I think there is not so much from an investor perspective, but from a business perspective, there's a huge risk when you start adding additional people and don't have the proper structures which an ERP system should give you. So don't wait too long, because you're right, there was never a good time for it, but keep in mind that the bigger you are, the more implications, the harder it becomes because you have more things going on at the same time. But I really appreciate the conversation here today.
Yeah, I appreciate each of you for being here. I really want to thank George, Nathan, and Bjarke for your time and for your expertise here today. We've covered a lot here in 55 minutes. I want to remind everybody, we have been recording this conversation. So everybody listening that maybe you're taking notes or listening and you wanted to go back to something, you'll have a link to this recording in your email here either today or tomorrow. So please take a look at that. Be sure to share with your colleagues as well. We also want to note here, Anthony Meshnick from Business Solution Partners is on the call. His contact information is there. You've got his number and his email. We'll also include some of his information as well in any follow-up emails we have to everyone registered for this call. So if you have any follow-up questions, Anthony is your guy, main contact. He'd be happy to answer any more questions that you may have. Again, be sure to share this with your colleagues. Another note here too, our next webinar is June 12th, a week from today, featuring a conversation with Mayo Clinic Ventures and Corporate Development. Registration for that is now open. We hope to see you all there for that. But George, Bjarke, Nathan, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for the conversation today.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks all.